Love does not knock softly, it walks in when a heart is ready and turns quiet days into bright mornings. This is the kind of love our Heartland star found when his path crossed with Paula *. Picture a wide-open sky over the plains where the air feels calm and strong at the same time. That is how Graham's life felt to many fans for years. They watched him ride across fields on screen, show up for family, stand firm when storms hit, and heal from losses that would break most people off screen. He carried that same steady spirit, but even steady hearts have seasons. There was a time when he closed a chapter and the silence after it felt longer than anyone expected. He chose stillness over noise and growth over quick answers. He made space for his work, for his friends, and for the simple peace that comes from long walks and quiet mornings with a cup in hand in those months. He focused on what he could build with his hands and his voice. He tried new projects that let him speak with honesty. He learned to say no and protect his time. He reconnected with the land and the small habits that make a day feel whole. Fans noticed a different glow in him. Not loud, not flashy, but clear, the kind of glow that says a person has met himself again and found courage in that meeting. Healing is not a straight road. Some days you step forward and other days you sit and breathe until the weight lifts. He gave himself the grace to do both. Friends saw the change and said his laugh came easier, and his eyes settled on people with full attention when he spoke about hope. It sounded practiced by life, not borrowed from a script. He was not searching to fill a gap, he was learning to carry joy even while holding what had been hard. That choice opened a door, he was not forcing it, taught him to trust timing and to be present in the small sunset scene without a phone. A drive with no music, only the hum of tires and the thoughts that rise and fall. The old version of him had been brave. The new version was also soft, and that mix made him ready in a quiet way. So when the next chapter began, it did not arrive with fireworks. It came as a steady light at the edge of morning, a light with a name, Paula. She did not rush that dawn or try to paint over the past. She matched his pace and met him where he truly stood. Before anyone used the word love, there was respect. Before respect, there was ease, a conversation that felt simple, yet rich. A shared smile that did not need a point to prove its worth. This is where our story starts for real. Not at a grand event, not with a headline, but with two people who had each done their work. Two lives that sounded good alone, beginning to sound better together, and in the soft rise of that new day, Graham found a feeling he had put down for a while and now could hold again without fear. There are moments in life when a single glance feels like the earth itself has paused just to listen. That is how Graham first noticed Paula. It was not in a crowded hall or a staged setting meant for romance. It was in the ordinary rhythm of a day that suddenly turned unforgettable. She was not trying to be noticed yet. There was something about her presence that drew his attention in a way he could not shake off. Her voice carried calmness, her eyes carried stories, and her smile seemed to hold a kind of quiet strength that mirrored the journey he had just walked through. Graham had spent years in the spotlight, where people see the actor before they see the man. Paula did not approach him like a star, she met him like a person. Her words were not rehearsed, her laughter not forced. That honesty cut through the polished world he had grown used to. For the first time in a long time, he felt seen, not as the beloved character from Heartland, but as Graham himself. That feeling can change a person because it speaks to the part of the soul that is often hidden from the public eye. Their first conversations were not long yet. They left echoes that lingered through the day. He thought about the ease of her presence and the natural way she listened. It had been a while since someone's silence carried as much comfort as their words. She asked simple questions but cared to hear the full answers he gave, honest replies, and noticed how natural it felt. What began as a spark soon became a light. He could not ignore Paula. Herself carried her own history, her own trials and lessons. This was not a woman chasing a fantasy, but one who had learned from life's rough edges. She knew the value of patience and the weight of promises. She had walked through shadows, yet chose to carry hope in her step. That depth gave Graham something rare, someone who understood the strength It takes to rebuild, and the courage required to love again. What struck him most was how unhurried she was in a world rushing toward outcomes. She was content with the present, a meal shared without checking the time, a story told without cutting. To the end, she moved at the pace of trust, and in doing so allowed Graham to breathe. That kind of rhythm is not just attractive, it is healing little by little. They built a space that felt safe. There was no pressure to be perfect, no need to act. A role he could sit in silence beside her and still feel connected. She could share a thought half-formed and know he would hold it without judgment. The bond was quiet, yet powerful, growing roots beneath the surface long before the world even knew it existed. And so what looked from the outside like two people simply meeting was in truth the start of something life changing, because sometimes love does not arrive with thunder or lightning. Sometimes it walks in softly, wearing the face of someone who makes you feel at home the moment they speak. Every love story carries a moment when the quiet spark turns into a steady flame. For Graham and Paula, that moment did not happen in a grand city or beneath bright lights. It came during a simple evening when the world seemed to hush itself just for them. The air was cool, the sky painted in fading gold, and the sound of leaves moving in the breeze filled the silence between their words. They were not dressed for an occasion. They were not trying to impress. It was life in its plain form, and somehow that made it powerful. Graham had known companionship before, but this was different. It was not about filling time or escaping loneliness. It was about finding joy in the smallest of details. The way Paula leaned into a story with her eyes shining, the way she noticed his pauses and gave him space to speak at his own rhythm. It was the kind of bond that did not demand attention, yet quietly earned devotion. They discovered they shared a love for the simple things, long drives with no destination, only the horizon, as company walks where silence was not awkward but comforting. Paula found beauty in the sound of gravel underfoot, and Graham found peace in the way she noticed things. Most people rushed past to him. Her presence was like discovering a new part of an old song, a melody that had always been there but had never been heard quite so clearly. As their days turned into weeks, Graham began to realize how much lighter he felt. The weight he once carried seemed to dissolve in the warmth of their connection. He laughed in ways he had not laughed for years. He smiled without thinking about cameras or scripts. He listened to Paula not just with his ears, but with his whole heart. Her words carried honesty, and her silences carried trust. Together, they were building a language only they could understand. But love after heartbreak is never without its fears. Graham knew the risk of opening up again. Memories of the past, sometimes whispered doubts and shadows of loss, tried to return. Yet Paula did not fight those shadows away. She simply stayed by his side. Her steadiness told him that healing is not about erasing what came before, but about writing something stronger after it. She became both mirror and anchor, reminding him of who he was and encouraging him toward who he could still become. One evening, as they watched the sky fade into night, Graham realized he was no longer standing in the ruins of time lies, and we all longer standing in the ruins of Kandy. Stronger after it, she became both mirror and anchor, reminding Talo, Katie, and Knees, we twidden, we sent an acorny elf, an encourage in my movie. I agreed to come with a place sick with Dakor gwe kekwe, Fcord. Ty do you want go at Wofford with a conweed where a why I call it can keed so kinda cry kai to be coli can why you go I can you can key we I can stikin you guy could again you to kay I to sick with I kick to kai you I wit quit with sick to kitty a quick get fat thick I have found way we go that I thought I got that. Turkey I've placed and that. I was it. What had been, he was standing at the doorway of what could be, and in Paula's quiet strength, he saw not just a companion, but a partner. Not just comfort for the present, but hope for the future. It was in that realization that their story deepened. Turning from gentle beginnings into a promise of something lasting. Some meetings feel like chance, but others feel written long before the day arrives. The way Graham and Paula's story unfolded carried that rare sense of destiny. It was not rushed. nor forced but woven into moments that seemed ordinary on the surface, yet extraordinary in the way they lingered if Section 3 was the doorway of discovery. Then this was the slow walk into the house of love. Paula brought with her a kind of calm that softened the noise around Graham's life. Fame had given him attention, but it had also taken privacy. She became his quiet shelter from the echo of the world when he spoke about dreams that did not fit the mold of what people expected. She listened without trying to fix or frame them. She gave him the courage to shape new paths and reminded him that fulfillment was not about applause, but about alignment with the soul. Their bond deepened through small rituals, morning coffee where the day's weight was still light, shared meals where stories turned into laughter, evenings where silence was not empty but full. These patterns stitched their days together till it became hard to imagine one without the other. Love was not arriving in dramatic waves, it was rising like a steady tide, pulling them closer without effort. For Graham, the beauty was in Paula's honesty. She never pretended to be perfect, never tried to hide her scars. Instead, she shared them with grace, showing that broken pieces can still shine. That kind of truth is rare in a world that celebrates polished images. It taught him that vulnerability is not weakness, but a bridge, and walking across that bridge together was what gave their connection depth. Friends who watched them could sense the difference. This was not the sparkle of a short romance. This was the glow of something rooted. The way she reached for his hand without hesitation. The way he looked at her, not with surprise, but with certainty. It carried the quiet power of two lives slowly becoming one rhythm. What made their story unique was how much they valued the unseen parts. The talks nobody else heard, the promises spoken in low voices. The comfort found not in grand gifts, but in presence. These were the treasures that gave their love weight. They were not chasing an image to show the world. They were living a truth that the world could simply notice if it chosen. Paula Graham found not just a partner, but a mirror reflecting back the best version of himself. And Graham, Paula found not just a companion, but a steady ground where her own dreams could rest together. They became more than two people healing from the past. They became proof that when love arrives at the right time, it does not have to be loud to be real. It only has to be true. Asterisk, there is a moment when a private story begins to glow so brightly it cannot stay hidden. For Graham and Paula, that shift came quietly at first. A photograph shared by a friend, a glance exchanged during an outing, a comment from Graham that hinted at joy in his voice. Fans who had followed him for years noticed the change before the headlines did. They saw his smile reach further into his eyes and his laughter flow with ease. Something had shifted, and it was not hard to guess why. The romance did not arrive like a secret staged for cameras. It grew naturally and eventually spilled into the open. When Paula stood beside Graham, the chemistry was undeniable. Not the kind of spark built for drama, but the deeper fire that comes from two souls walking in step. It was in the way he leaned toward her when she spoke. It was in the way she looked at him, as if the world could fall away and he would still be enough. What made their love story stand out was its humility. There were no grand announcements, no sudden declarations for attention. Instead, there was a gradual unfolding, like petals of a flower opening to the sun. Each shared moment built trust. Each public glimpse carried grace. Fans admired not just their affection, but their authenticity. It felt less like a celebrity romance and more like two ordinary people choosing each other every day. As weeks turned into months, their bond began to ripple outward. Friends spoke of the joy they carried into gatherings. Colleagues noticed Graham's renewed energy in his work. Paula's influence was not about changing him, but about reminding him of the parts he had almost forgotten. The parts that thrived in love, in laughter, in the calm certainty that someone is standing beside you no matter what. For Graham, it was healing to love openly again. There had been a time when heartbreak made him cautious, wary of letting the world in. But Paula's steadiness gave him courage. It was not about proving anything to fans or defending his choices. It was about honoring the truth of what they shared and letting it exist without fear. That freedom showed in every step he took beside her hand. For Paula, the journey was just as meaningful. She was not chasing the spotlight, yet she accepted it with Grace because it came as part of loving Graham. She carried herself with dignity, never trying to outshine, but always shining by simply being herself. The world saw her as the woman who brought light back into the star they admired, but to Graham, she was not a headline, she was home together. Their story blossomed into something rare, not built on performance, not shaped by expectation, but held together by respect, patience, and love that grew stronger each day. It was a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful romances are not the ones announced with noise, but the ones that unfold with quiet truth until everyone around can feel it too. Asterisk. When whispers of Graham and Paula's bond began to drift into the public eye, the Heartland family of fans responded with warmth that surprised even him. This was not just another celebrity couple update for them. It was personal. For years, they had walked with Graham through the highs and lows of his character on screen and through glimpses of his life off screen. To see him smile again, to see him carry joy so openly, it felt like watching a beloved friend find his way home. The reaction was not filled with judgment or gossip, but with celebration. Fans wrote messages that poured out like letters of encouragement. They said his happiness gave them hope in their own lives. Some admitted they had lost faith in love after heartbreak, but seeing him start again helped them believe in second chances. Others thanked Paula for standing beside him and for the quiet light she brought into his world. It was as though the audience who once cheered his fictional romances on screen had now chosen to cheer his real one even louder. Social media became a small chorus of kindness. Photos of them together were met with hearts, not criticism. Comments carried more blessing than curiosity. It was rare in a world that often feeds on drama to see such genuine goodwill, but that is what Heartland has always been about: family resilience. Community and fans extended that same spirit to the man who had given them years of storytelling. Graham himself noticed the shift. He spoke with gratitude for the messages and carried humility in his voice when he acknowledged the support he had. Expected some resistance, perhaps, questions or doubts, but instead he found acceptance. It was proof that people were not only invested in his career, but in his humanity. They wanted him to be well, to love, and to live fully beyond the character they want. Like, look at this. Look at this. And we all know. We all live. Look at this. And we all know. I've been exploring that. While we know so live like we do love see. We want to see with see on we live. We want to be a see. We want to confend. They want to re-give. We want to die see. At we want to again we out with we want to want see we want to we want to we why we want to get on why k to we you so you we do we see you can I to with the goat of second I could dear week to kick wake do it tick you I could I you get for kick get at tick you what we at I could to with got head to thick cat that with diet at you the pack on a week Admired for Paula, the wave of support was moving too. Though she had not grown up in the glare of fans, she welcomed their kindness. With sincerity, she understood that being close to someone in the public eye meant being part of their world, and she embraced it without losing her own identity. Her grace in the face of attention only made the story more inspiring, because she was never trying to perform for approval. She was simply living love as it was meant to be together. They became a symbol, not of perfection, but of possibility. A reminder that even when chapters close, new ones can open with more beauty than expected. Fans who once feared the loss of a beloved character now found joy in knowing that the man behind the role was writing his own story, one far richer than fiction. Asterisk, every story that matters leaves behind more than just names and dates. It leaves a lesson carved gently into the hearts of those who listen. For Graham and Paula, that lesson is simple, yet powerful. Love is not bound by time nor defeated by heartbreak. It waits patiently in the corners of life, and when the soul is ready, it steps forward. Quietly yet unshakably, their journey is not written like a script with perfect lines and dramatic climaxes. It is written in the pauses, in the laughter that breaks into silence, in the soft look exchanged across a table, and in the courage to be open after being hurt. It is not a fairy tale where challenges vanish. It is real love where scars remain, yet no. Longer define this story together. They showed that the end of one chapter is not the end of the book. It is simply the clearing of space for something more honest, and true fans who followed Graham through Heartland know how deeply stories of family and resilience can touch the heart, but here in his own life, he is no longer acting the role, he is living it. And Paula is not just a companion on that journey. She is the proof that hope can return in forms you never planned for. She is the reminder that love after loss can be stronger, gentler, and more enduring than the love that came before. As their story continues, it carries no guarantee of perfection, but it carries the promise of authenticity. A love rooted in patience, a love shaped by respect, a love steady enough to weather storms and soft enough to make every sunrise brighter. For those watching from afar, it is not just a romance to admire, but an invitation to believe again, to trust that even after brokenness, even after seasons of silence, the heart can find its song. And so we close this chapter not with an ending, but with a beginning. Because Graham and Paula's story is still unfolding. Every day they choose each other, and in that choice they write something more lasting than headlines. They write a reminder to all of us that true love does not arrive when we demand it. It arrives when we are finally ready to honor it love. Found them not in noise, but in stillness, not in fame, but in truth. And in their union we see that the most beautiful stories are not always acted on a stage, but lived quietly in the hearts of two people who simply refuse to give up on love.